Hey YouTubers, this is Gary Owen with another video about car maintenance. Literally about 20 minutes ago we finished filming how to change the oil in your vehicle, and part of what I do when I change the oil is I rotate my tires. Now the purpose of rotating your tires is to make sure that your tires wear evenly. If you do a lot of off-roading or spinning, or if your front wheels aren't aligned just right, your tires are going to wear unevenly. And if you don't balance that out, then you'll have, your two front tires will wear out and need to be replaced long before your back tires, or vice versa. So there's different philosophies as to how to rotate your tires. Some people do opposites. They'll do right rear to left front and left rear to right front, and vice versa. That's what we're going to do today. Some people do them in a circle. They'll move this one back to here, that one over to the other side, and do them in a circle. The way you rotate them is really up to you, but the end result is that you get your tires into different positions throughout their life so that they wear out at about the same time, and you don't end up having to buy onesie-twosie tires here and there. So the things you're going to need, you're just going to need three things. You're going to need a jack, you're going to need at least one jack stand, and you're going to need a tire tool that fits the lug bolts on your tire. Now you may also need a concrete block if your jack doesn't necessarily go high enough to lift your wheels up into the air. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do before we ever mess around with the jack or anything is we're going to loosen the lug bolts while it's sitting on the ground. The reason being, even though I have the vehicle in park and the parking brake set, the front wheels will turn if you jack it up off the ground. And so you want to loosen it while the weight of the vehicle is pressing down on it. Now another thing you may want to remember is before you get started, make sure that your vehicle is in park, the parking brake is set. If it's a standard transmission, put it in reverse, and that way that'll resist that'll stop the vehicle from wanting to roll. And you also want it on as level a surface as possible. This has got a little bit of a grade to it, but it's nothing to really worry about. Now we've loosened the ones on this tire. We're going to go around. One around. And we're going to do the same thing on the tire that we're going to rotate them with. There we go. Now for loosening and tightening your lug bolts, I really recommend one of these. I have a 4-way that I use for different things, but this one gives you a lot more leverage for loosening these lug bolts, because sometimes they'll tighten up over time. There we go. So now that's all loosened. Another tool we're going to use for this job, go ahead and, is a grease gun. I'll show you why here in just a minute. Alright. Now, here's where the jack comes into play. Alright. We're going to elevate a little bit before we get under there. Alright. Come around here and pan under here. You can see right here where your wheel attaches, you've got an option. You can either put your jack here under the frame part here, or you can put it underneath right here where the wheel attaches. This is a little bit convex, but there is an indention under there. So I'm going to put this little ball into that indention, and I'm going to jack my wheel itself up. Alright? And what you want to do is you want to jack it up just until it's off the ground. You don't want to jack it way up in the air. Alright? Now you want to get maybe an inch of clearance from the ground so that you're not going to have any problems getting your new tire on. Alright? Now this is one of those moments where if you have a 4-way, now that the lug bolts are loose, this part, go ahead and this part might be easier with a 4-way, because you can just kind of swirl them like this and get them off. Alright, set your lug bolts off to the side. If you have a hubcap cover, like the Dodge over there does, you can use that as kind of a tray to keep them on. Or if you have an air wrench, or somebody with access to an air wrench, would also make this easier. All 5 lug bolts are off. We're going to remove the wheel and we'll roll it around to where it's going. Now we'll go back up front here. Now, you've only got the one jack, which is where the jack stand comes in. Alright, we're going to place the jack stand in a position to support the weight of the vehicle while we're working over there, so we can take the jack with us to jack up that back tire. Now we're going to have to jack it up a little bit higher because that jack stand is in its lowest setting and it still doesn't want to fit under there. That's fine. Alright, you just don't want to have your vehicle totally cockeyed. Since we're going to be balancing across the corner here, let's see if we can just knock the pin out altogether. There we go. Alright. Now your wheel is going to drop even though your jack stand is under the frame because of your shocks and your tie rod ends. Alright? That's fine. If you hear a little bit of popping, it's not the end of the world. It's just settling in those gravels. So now we're going to take this and our jack over here. We're going to do the same thing on this side. Alright, we're going to find a good spot for our jack. I'm going to put mine right here. You want it to be as close to the tire as possible, because what you want to avoid is maybe putting it up here, because at that point it'll lift the whole side of the vehicle and you'll have both of these wheels off the ground, which will mean, and since that wheel is off, you're going to have your whole car balanced on your jack, a jack stand, and one tire. You don't want that. You want as many points in contact with the ground as you can possibly get. So when you're jacking the wheel up, put the jack as close to the wheel as you can get it, so that when this wheel comes off the ground, the other one is still in contact with the ground. There we go. And we're going to do the same thing over here. We're just going to twirl the lug bolts on. Alright. One. Oh, what's the battery look like?
At least halfway. It's hard to see.
Okay. Well, because I only charged it for like 5 minutes. Three. 4. There we go. Alright, so that one's off. So we're going to take this one off. Well, there it goes. Alright, now here's where the grease gun comes in handy. We just took that one off, right?
Uh-huh.
So this one's going to be my chair. Alright, we're going to set the new tire on. Well, not new, but... Alright. kind of balance it on there. Alright. And then each one of these lug bolts, what you want to do is you want to put just a little spot of grease inside the lug bolt. Reason being, if you don't, between rust and brake dust and rain, they will corrode over time. And it makes them hard to get off if you let them get corroded. This grease will help keep moisture out and will help lubricate them so that when you rotate your tires in the future, or if you have a flat and have to change a tire, they're a lot easier to get off. Now, while it's in the air like this, I'm not going to crank down on it super tight, for the same reason that we loosen them while it's on the ground, because your wheel might turn and stop you from getting them as tight as they can. But what we are going to do is we are going to start them. All right? And when you tighten these up initially, you want to do alternating lug bolts to pull the tire in opposite directions, because you don't want, say, this side to be pulled in tighter than this side because you went in a circle, and that might cause your tires to wear unevenly. So let's start with this one. All right, we're going to just tighten it until it stops on its own. Don't force it. And then we're going to go to one of these opposite ones. I'm going to do this one. It's a lot easier with tires that have 5 lug bolts than it is with 6, because you kind of lose track. Now we're going to go to this one because it's opposite. You don't want to go to this one because it's right next to it. All right. Remember, you want to go across to an opposite. All right, and the last one here. There we go. So now they've all been tightened just snug. So now we can actually lower it. Alright, so now the weight's on the tire itself. So now we can use this one to crank down on them. We're going to do the same thing with this one. We're going to do opposites, okay? Let's start with this one. And then we're not going to stand on it, but we are going to put a pretty good, if it seems like it goes easily there, give it one more good crank. There you go. See how easy that was? I'm going to give it one more. And we're doing opposites. I went from here to here. So now we're going to do this one. That one was pretty easy, so we'll go one more. There we go. And there we go. So now we pack up our tools and we go around.
You need to tire.
No, I gotta get the tire down. We go around to our next one here. Alright, now one thing you might want to look at while you've got your tires off, you can see that this one has brake pads. It does not have drums on the front. You can see your brake pads from right here. Alright, you can poke your head in here and see the thickness of your brake pads. You might want to check and make sure that they have good thickness. If this metal plate here is about to touch your rotor, you might want to consider replacing your brakes, because when that happens, it's very expensive to replace the rotors and the brake pads. So while you've got your tires off, take a look at your brake pads and make sure that they're in good shape. Also, you might want to check your brake lines and things of that nature for any leaks. Look for any busted shocks or anything of that nature. This particular vehicle does not have any grease plugs, or else I would be greasing the front joints as well as checking my brakes and things. But it doesn't have any grease plugs for me to grease, so we're not going to worry about that. Now, we've checked our brakes. Our rotor looks like it's in decent shape. It's a little rusty, but the surface here is fine. So we're going to have to jack it up a little bit higher, because
if you remember, because we put the jack stand under the frame, the tire, the wheel area itself was allowed to settle down a little bit, which means it's now too low for me to fit the other tire on. But we'll go ahead and slide this under here. Jack this up a little bit. Now, when you're jacking things up, it might be a good idea, just for shits and giggles, even though it's lifted off this stand now, just to leave it where it is until you're done. That way, if your jack should fail for whatever reason, your rotor is not going to fall down and hit the ground. The frame will catch on your stand here and save you the trouble of trying to lift the corner of the vehicle up off the ground to get a jack under it. Alright, so we've got it up high enough now. Now some people do refer to this as a star pattern. I always just keep track of how many bolts it's got. This is a 5-bolt wheel. Dodge over there has 6. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to squirt a little bit of grease into each lug bolt. Not a ton, just a little dab, just enough to prevent corrosion, water, excessive brake dust, things like that from causing them to seize up. Because that's one thing, in addition to overzealous mechanics with air wrenches, that can cause your lug bolts to tighten up to the point to where you can't get it off in the event of an emergency. So, you don't want them to be loose, but you also don't want them so tight that if you blow a tire, your wife can't get it off with a good lug wrench. Alright, we got them all started with a little bit of grease in there. I'm going to do the same thing here. You hear that squeaking? That's where that old grease had worn out a little bit. New grease ought to fix it though. Do opposites like we did before. So now those are all snug. You see what I meant by, even though I have the emergency brake set, the front wheel will turn when it's up off the ground, because your emergency brake does not lock your front wheels. So you always want to make sure you have at least one of your back wheels on the ground, or a chock or something behind one of your wheels to stop the vehicle from shifting, especially if you're doing this on any kind of a slope. So now we've got our 5 lug bolts tightened up. The stand has no tension on it, so I'll go ahead and pull it out. And then we'll lower the jack. Alright, and the weight of the vehicle is now on that wheel. Let me get my little cotter pin back in my jack stand here. And then we're going to do the same thing we did on that other one. We're going to take this one and we're going to put a good tighten it down on here. And we have now rotated 2 of the 4 tires. We would just repeat this process for the other 2 tires and it'll be done. Like I said, I rotate tires every time I change the oil. It gives me a chance to make sure my tires wear evenly. It gives me a chance to grease the front end in the event of the Dodge where it has grease plugs. It also gives me a chance to look at my rotors, my brake pads, brake lines, shocks, and things that are usually really hard to see if you're just crawling under the vehicle. This is If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, feel free to post them below. I'm not going to make you guys watch me do the other 2 tires, but this is Garrett out. Y'all have a good one. Alright, so caveat to the video real quick. Once you've got all 4 of your tires rotated, drive your vehicle 5-10 miles, go get a burger or something, and come back, and then double check the tightness of your lug bolts. Because even though you crank down on them with your tire tool, once the vehicle actually rolls for a mile or 2, those wheels will kind of settle in, and a lug bolt or 2 might loosen up a little bit in those first couple of miles. So once you've got your tire on, once you've got them all 4 rotated and tightened down, just take a quick trip and come back and then double check to make sure that they're still tight. Just wanted to let you guys know that.